Hello, my name is Dr. David Ederduipoon, founder of the Faces of Advocacy. I really wanted to make this video as a giant thank you to someone who has been so important and helped us greatly at the beginning stages of the campaign. My friend and the executive director of the Canadian Citizen Rights Council, Randall Emery. So when we first started Faces of Advocacy in May of 2020, we didn't know a lot. We had no idea how to approach people. We had no idea how to talk to government. Arguably, we still don't. And so what happened was I met Randall at the time, and who offered us a great deal of help, both in reaching the higher levels of government to help enact the changes we were facing in the campaign, and also a lot of guidance for myself. The reason I want to do these video series is because these are the people who helped us succeed. We worked very hard as a team, all of us, you as well. And there were just things that we could not do without the guidance of people who've helped us. And I wanted to put a spotlight on Randall and his work for this video, just so we can see what other people are doing. And also a giant thank you for everything that you've done. So welcome, Randall, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, David, thank you so much for having me, and it's really a pleasure. I've just got to say, what a great job everybody has been doing on the grassroots level at Faces of Advocacy. How you've grown, how you got the news, how you've kept the pressure on to get results. Um, as you said, I'm the executive director of the Canadian Citizens Rights Council, which is a pretty new nonprofit organization that several of us got started a few years ago. Our interest, what brought a lot of us together, there were a couple of issues, but what brought a lot of us together is just a desire to fix a lot of inequities that we saw in Canadian law that were really specific to Canadians who have international ties. And from my own standpoint, one of the things that is a driving issue for me, and I think would connect with a lot of people who within Faces of Advocacy, is the issue of really kind of different levels of citizenship that exists right now for children of Canadian citizens. My children were born outside of Canada, and they actually have different rights when it comes to passing on citizenship as every other Canadian. It's just based on that solely alone. And there are a lot of other people in that same situation. I've got friends who've got grandkids who have, their children are Canadian, but their grandchildren have like no status whatsoever in Canada. And that's kind of the big issue that brought us together, but also voting rights. Uh, Anyone who's lived abroad will know, hopefully, that they can vote now from abroad, but that's really very recent. That's just a few years ago. So that's one of the things that we weighed in on. Some of the founding members of our group were really organizing and very active on that issue. Um, One actually, uh, to make a point, actually ran against the prime minister at the time, even though he was not allowed to vote, which really showed how kind of silly some of these things are. He was allowed to run in an election, but he wasn't allowed to vote in it. But yeah, and then when this issue came up, I think we just read about it in the news. We were just kind of reminiscing before we started recording here, and we reached out because this is exactly the kind of thing that we set up the Canadian Citizens Rights Council to address. And we were really pleased to be working with you, David, and connect you to the right people in the minister's offices. That was, I think, the biggest contribution that we had. I worked a little bit just on a volunteer basis on Parliament Hill um, for a vice chair of the Citizenship and Immigration Standing Committee, and had some connections from that. Have friends who've worked at Carol Sutherland Brown, who's another one of our board members. She worked for Health Canada for many years on the policy side. We'd already spoken to senators and MPs on different issues before. So when this came up, it gave us a chance to to connect a group that was very well organized, um, and put you in touch with the right people. And then we were happy to, I think, just talking about kind of strategy to help get it through and how to approach some of the meetings. That was the contribution that we were really happy to make.
Outstanding.
And Emma was absolutely wonderful too. I mean, and I know there's others in your group who are really, and she's got some experience in politics too. But I mean, I have to tell you, from the Canadian Citizens Rights Council perspective, we were just really so impressed with what you guys were doing throughout this entire process.
That's very kind of you to say that we were organized. A lot of the time it was just running improv the entire way through. For those of you who are recent to our campaign, Emma was our previous director of policy. She has since gone to complete her PhD. And what was so critical for us at the time was Randall reached out and said, "Hey, I'm running this Canadian Citizens Rights Council. How can we help?" And we said, "Randall, we had no idea what we're doing." Randall was able to get us in touch with very high people at the IRCC, the immigration group in Canada. And from those conversations, we were able to shape what ultimately became the extended family and compassionate exemptions into Canada. In addition to that, there were little things that Randall really helped teach me. He said, don't wait until they send you the people to connect you to. Get the emails of the people you want to connect to right there and then. And that's how we ended up expanding to connect with Health Canada, with public safety, and this helped build the networking skills. So these high-level meetings could not have happened so early, so efficiently, and so amazingly without Randall stepping in and really helping us out. So a lot of that organization and a lot of that success has to come down to the work that Randall and his team at the Canadian Citizens Rights Council was able to provide for us. So right now, what is the Canadian Citizens Rights Council aiming to do at the moment? Are there big projects you want to talk about? Are there big things that you want to focus on?
Yeah. Thanks so much for asking. Well, there are. I mean, I think a lot of people right now are experiencing a lot of delays. Canadian citizens who are sponsoring their spouses, and I've got to say, I really sympathize with you on that one. I've I know what it is to go through multi-year delays, going through sponsorship applications. And and I've got to say, I think there's a lot more room for advocacy on that issue. And I can tell you, having seen it from the other side too, working in the office of an MP, that really those offices are flooded with those kinds of requests all the time. If people are waiting for a sponsorship, there's a lot of people out there. So I know there's different groups out there that are working on this, and uh, that's one area that definitely could see a lot more advocacy and a lot of the same kind of work that you're doing. Um, the but coming back to the same issue that I was talking about very early about the citizenship issue, that also is a real issue. And maybe I just take a minute to explain it. If so, a lot of you who are in Faces of Advocacy, you're in the group because your long-term partner is a foreign national. So you're in a relationship. You're eventually going to start a family, and there's this very strange thing in Canadian law. Like, even though you're a Canadian, if it, your child will not necessarily your child will be assigned certain rights based on being born in Canada or not. So if your children are born in Canada, um, they will have the full range of mobility as they get older. They'll be able to go to a different country, have children. Their children will be Canadians. They can come back whenever they want. But if your child is born outside of the country, as mine were, and they're growing up here in Canada, they don't, they, if they marry somebody from another country, they will not, they, and have children, the children have to be born in Canada for the children to be citizens. And in fact, they have like no status at all. There's like nothing. They don't even get like a automatic permanent residency or something like that. No, it's you're just like nothing. So it's really, um, uh, I mean, I'm, I've spoken to lawyers who think it actually is a violation of the charter. So so it's unfair at a minimum. And it's worth noting too that you know, a lot of times people will say, well, how are other countries doing this? And in the United States, as an example, um, there's a requirement to have lived in the country before your child is born if you're a citizen. And there's actually some inequities in law there, but there's just been a bill introduced in the United States, um, and it was introduced by folks on both sides, on both parties in the U.S. So things are kind of changing, despite all the kind of things that we see with with COVID. I mean, I know it's been a really difficult year for people. I mean, for people all over the world. And I guess the other thing too is, you know, if there's anything we can do to help get the borders open, which I think are tied to vaccination rates, I would, you know, as a matter of moving that forward, I just would encourage everybody to please, you know, encourage everyone you know to go out and get a vaccine as quickly as possible to help move that, get those numbers up.
Hmm.
Now that there's been that 70% single dose plus 20% full dose uh, plan or measure. Measure is probably the better word than plan. I know there's work to really get a more detailed
A lot of
plan
work.
how that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but you know, hey, like let's get that done. And that's I I I kind of feel like if we had more openings within the provinces tied to those same numbers, that would put everyone interests and closer alignment. Um,
Hmm. For those of us who know John McCall and Donna McCall is a Canadian mother of who married an American. Her children were born in the United States. So what Randall is saying is those children who were born in the United States had no citizenship in Canada. Now, this can be applied for. They could have eventually got their birthright. The problem was when the pandemic hit and Donna McCall was sick, dying in her hospital bed, because that paperwork was not done, because there was no birthright, her American children who have Canadian birthright were not able to enter Canada. Because of that, they said goodbye on FaceTime. And these are the issues that of citizenship that I didn't really understand until I got talking with you guys, until I met Randall, and these are very important things. Randall, from my understanding now, you're working as an immigration consultant, and I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about what an immigration consultant is and the work that you're doing moving forward in that
absolutely.
regard. Yes.
Sure, sure. Yes. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I've just formed my own firm at Emery Immigration, um, and with the idea of providing fair and honest advice to help people through the different processes. But you know, like citizenship applications, that's the kind of thing I could help folks with, even or proof of citizenship in this case. But yeah, but you know, there's that advocacy side of it too, right? It's I feel really strongly that it's not just, and part of the motivation for getting involved in that was um, to to kind of work on both sides of this, because you need somebody who's competent to and is going to listen to you and provide fair and honest advice to you as you're going through some process. But you know, I've done a lot of advocacy over the years, and you you need, and not everyone is going to tell you that that's part of this whole process, but it really should be. You know, there's no reason to not be active throughout. You know, we're citizens, we can vote now, right? No matter where we are in the country or in the world as Canadians, you know, register, make yourself heard. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with Faces of Advocacy, because you guys are doing such a wonderful job with that. But, you know, in terms of what I could help you through as an immigration consultant, and is that type of process. And just to let people know, yeah, I mean, I didn't know what an immigration consultant was a few years back either. But immigration consultants are somewhere between a paralegal and a lawyer in terms of the work that they are authorized to do. You could almost think, if you're thinking about medicine, you could think about it kind of like a nurse practitioner to a doctor. Like they can do a whole lot of things for you. But basically, a consultant can help you fill out any application. If you have the need to go to a tribunal, can represent you in a tribunal. But if you need to appeal to the Federal Court of Appeals, or the Supreme Court, that's where you need to get a lawyer, and absolutely need a lawyer involved.
So a different but vital skill set nonetheless. So just making sure that people watching know how to get in touch with you. What is the best way to keep up with the Canadian Citizens Rights Council? What is the best way to keep in touch with you as an immigration consultant? How do we get to know Randall Emery moving forward?
Well, you could out to me. I'm at emeryimmigration.ca. That's the site for my firm, and Canadian Citizens Rights Council at citizensrights.ca. And I really encourage you, please, if you're a member of Faces of Advocacy, to sign up with the Canadian Citizens Rights Council. And we're looking to apply, some strategic investments to moving these issues forward. So I mentioned some of the things that we want to accomplish, but there are ways to do it. So David was talking about, well, how do you approach some of these things? So being very active is one of the ways to do it, but also, when you are in any kind of minority group, and when you have a relationship with somebody from another country, you are a legal minority, like all of a sudden, like, so in the majority, and you're don't know anything about immigration or anything like that, and then suddenly you have a relationship, you get married, you have, whenever you have different legal rights, you're in a legal minority, right? So I don't, and I say that because when you don't have, and in these cases, like, it's a very small percentage of the population, right? So how do you move things forward when you're maybe 5% of the population, right? Because you're really at the mercy of everybody else. Things may be fair, they might not be fair, but if 80% of the people in the country agree with them, and you're in the 5% that's disadvantaged, well, you're in a tough spot. So one of the things you can do is a public opinion research, and that takes some money to put together.
A lot of money.
Well, a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, I mean, think about it. It depends on how many people are involved, right? So if every person who was a member of Faces of Advocacy gave $1 to the Canadian Citizens Rights Council, that would be $11,000, and that money could go to that would fund for sure a public opinion poll on, probably have 5 to 10 different issues covered, and you could get a very go with a big polling company, get lots of information. You could say, here's the issue that we're working on. How do people feel about this solution or that solution? How does it break down by how they voted in the last election? And then you can turn around and you can take, some or all of that and approach MPs and say, okay, we want to do this. We think, hopefully they're sympathetic to it. But if you go in and you say, listen, we're proposing a solution to you here, and we've gone out and we've talked to people, we've asked people how they feel about it, and I've seen that work in other areas of advocacy to really kind of turn things around.
Mm,
And you can be working on something if you've got that data to show. And again, this comes back to being in a minority uh, group, which you are. Everyone should recognize that. And I'm saying that to to people who look like me, who are not used to being in a minority, right? Like, I mean, you are, and you have to think about that. How do you how do you um, how do you how do you convince people? And that's a real easy way to do it. So it's really about people participating. So just like how and obviously getting press about things, but if you can go to people and you can show them, I've got a solution, and the people of the country and Canadians support it. That was one thing. I mean, just coming back to the voting, there was some polling done on voting. I was very privileged to have a chance to speak before a parliamentary committee in the House of Commons when the voting rights bill was moving through Parliament, and that's one of the things I brought up. I referenced the polling that was there. And it was interesting. The polling that had been done showed that Canadians valued um, voting rights in federal elections, but not provincial or municipal elections if you're abroad, which, I mean, to me makes complete sense, right? Because you wouldn't expect somebody who's not living in a city or a town to be voting in a municipal election, right?
mm,
And that's just how Canadians felt. That was one of the points that I raised, and it it really just goes a long way to advancing your argument.
mm. Randall, this has been illuminating, and I think I should think on this polling idea a lot more. I know you brought it up with me last year, and something we really need to think about. Is there anything that you wanted to close off on before we close this chat? Anything last words? Something you wanted to get across?
Well, I'd like to ask you, David, because I mean, what has this meant to you? What happened? I mean, we started in May of last year. We had our first meeting June 8th. Then it was 4 months in October when it was announced. What how's that? What's that meant to you on a personal level? What's it meant to other people in the group? Um, and how have you been holding up through all of this?
What it meant to me on a personal level. It showed me that I had a lot to learn and a lot to grow in when it came to dealing with something so insurmountable that I did not think anything could change. Oh, what did I hear from other people? I saw the incredible impact that we are all able to have by helping one another and from learning and growing. Seeing the families reunite, their faces, their selfies, their stories, these were just incredible things, and it meant the world to me. I also see now that there are still many challenges that we have to face. And the difference, though, between June 8th, when I first met you, and now, is that not all of those things seem insurmountable anymore. There are ways and things that we can do. And these are the wonderful changes that I'm grateful they helped guide us through, Randall. And it means a great deal that you brought us here.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, David. It really is. It really is. And you know, I'm really happy that we could have been that we were a small part of this, and I'm just really happy for all the people who were able to finally be reunited after such a long period of time. And we're that it really means a lot. And we're really grateful for everyone at the Canadian Citizens Rights Council just to have had the chance to work with you and to see you be together. And we hope that all of you will continue to be voices in the public to advance, this idea that family unity is important, that we should have the right to be together, and that we can do it, obviously, even in a pandemic, in a safe way. that was one of the things we always talked about. It's yeah, and I just hope that when this pandemic is all over, that we can finally meet in person,
Yes.
and 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 to all of you out there, we wish you all the best, and thanks for your time today.
This is Randall Emery, the Executive Director of the Citizens Rights Council, as well as immigration consultant. Anyone watching this, if you're feeling lost, alone, disenfranchised, join us in the campaign at the facesofadvocacy.com, facesofadvocacy.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, as well as my gosh, it just we have to revive all social media as well as Twitter at Faces of Advocacy. We are fighting for hope in a post-COVID world. Very nice to see you all. My name is Dr. David Edward Poon, and we're leaving in 3, 2, 1.